I was going to read something different, but I'm not in the right mental space for it, and I feel like being in this dark room and having heard all these different voices, I'm not quite attuned to the piece I wanted to read, which is a longer performance piece, but I might read it tomorrow. So I'll read something that I've read lots, and it's the epilogue to one of my plays from My Little Enlightenment plays, and this is in the play Le Bijoux de Scrayer Paper Tigers, and it's a series of pieces that I've called translational tête-à-tête, or imaginary conversations with Enlightenment thinkers, writers, scientists, and pseudo-scientists. So kind of responding to these source materials. And this is at the end where this figure of the epilogue enters as a deus ex machina and psychoanalyzes Marx. Whenever I'm stuck, I just turn my eyes towards these galactic luminaries, my delicate communion with you. Oh, you unhappy eyes. Whether deception occurs when observing the eternal stars is not really the right question, not a favorable flexion of your extraocular muscles. I know that any star not over the zenith is truly a penny seen below water, and therefore the authorities and extracurricular agents say that heaven is fourfold, refracted, redacted, accidental, and utterly unsentimental. Another conclusion would be that every line falls obliquely, but together the lines do not appear as a perfect circle, like a pea or a pearl. There is harmony in similarity, which is just another way of saying natural philosophy is our real love affair that doesn't add up. For me, a tugging, wrenching sight is a gift from the firmament in this world in which I don't want anything else except light that is not hung or like a curtain concealed against that nimble seeing which is theatrical, dramatically structured for blurry eyes. This is my method of exhaustion. I'm not exactly blind, but being someone who walks the precipice, I'm incorrigible. When they talk to me, they might not know. After all, reality is there to be corrected. It has to allow it. I direct these shadows and those shapes. I adore that splodge or blot over there as perhaps something knowable. Now, you might think, what sweet palaver, I'm just another who discovers poetry in the flapping of fortepianos, comptometers, dictational earpieces, phonographs and cryptographs, slopping a little bit of that cerebral sustenance onto tables in the mellifluent bowl of some reverberating celestial vaults. Oh, pace myself, order my life. Sometimes when I cannot read these incendiary scriptures for all their illuminated bombast, I simply make up a likely hypothesis, which usually does just as well. For example, I do not know why someone's bonnet or briquette catches fire, but I do know about the labor of reason. So I turn to my old friend and say, "Dear Karl Marx, ma petite minette, you ought to know better. You're an inquiring intelligence. Why these bibliographic fantasies? Sit down for a moment. You are likely to be impatient, even critical and sarcastic with those who cannot match your frantic rhythm. But you are adaptable. You always think of the future, of action, of objects, because you constantly need to be on the move. Beware, however, not to confuse obstinacy with intransigence. You are happy as long as your mind is in turmoil, and even then you need to have plenty of people around, people who listen to you, unless you are the one to glean for yourself the intellectual food you are so fond of. I have to confess I'm slightly unnerved by the slab of flesh on fire, so I'm just inventing this confessional sinner driving home the nail into the wall of a curious but attached audience. Come to think of it, this could be a nice little show. Well, dear one, since you are so well trained in stunning movements, I would suggest removing the parapet and coming right out with it. It's okay you're upset. I'm not upset. Like the majority of earth signs, Karl Marx, you're efficient, concrete, and not too emotional. What matters to you is what you see. You judge the tree by its fruits. But appearance and reality are two different things, aren't they? You are a kind of genius, so it's no big deal. Nobody tires of your company because you're always planning things and suggesting pretentious excursions. Obviously, so many movements for one man may scare people off, and some may even criticize your brutality or your tendency to lose your temper. But you are so warm and genuine, so expansive. Isn't that a good thing? Oh, my heart's nonpareil, I would say that space is truly, invisibly, and indivisibly drastic and therefore touchable. Here's my map of the world. My astronomer's guide in big print. Now let's hear the whole truth before anyone gets into an argument. Look here, I'm just reading from a random page. Well, this is nice. And then I'm going to read the last monologue from a different piece in that series called Emilia Galotti's Colouring Book of Feelings, that has a kind of flirtatious relationship with Goethe's theory of colour, Adam Smith's theory of moral sentiments, and Lessing and the sentimental comedy by Gellert called The Tender Sisters. And this is at the end, this sort of teacher figure addresses the two main characters. Making the world the persistent proof that forces do exist, that encounters do matter, that the shuttling of one's little poetic intensities make little impingements upon the eye and ear, and lo and behold, maybe even the ever-fretting heart, feeling arises out of some momentary, sometimes prolonged and crazy resonances passing between minds, between bodies. Feelings at their most obstinate refuse the rhythm of mathematics. Sometimes they float alongside comprehension and dates and formulas, viscerally eloquent toward the extrusion of thought. So bodies exist. They make lateral choices, their innards shimmer, which is the task of the translator, to bring out the shimmer. For example, if you stretched that left arm or that right leg, you'd become unrecognizably body, or more prosaically, you'd fix an itch, adjust some muscular tension. And then we could all go for a good glass of sherry and say, there you go, now we know what this body, this language can do. What a lovely day. But then you'd discover a freckle and another and another and another, and in this unforeseen lockstep, you'd step into some generalizable theory of knowledge. Balancing on the pliancy on which rests that expansion of seesaw recognition, of desire, you trip flatteringly, a body hitched to the tenderness of an imagination. Emilia and Orsina listen intently without much to go on, but they go on anyway in their rondo of their ostentatious love of speaking in bouquets of nosegays and violently cute violets. Maybe someone tells them calmly, it's bedtime, and holds up the don't worry, just relax card. Maybe to assert just that, no frills. Is this it? They shush in shattering daintiness, our mutually crystallized caprice. And the magister takes their temperatures soothingly in order for the less cushy dreams to be plucked or retired. It's one or the other, he murmurs, gently tipping the mercury out of its thermal equilibrium. And so the hoppiness of their trampoline liaison is yet to be experienced as more than a reflection. The colors of the world are already bouncy, and the weather is exactly right for everything to be afloat with fizzings and bridges for an impossibly tangled state to realize that their subjective reading of their own subjectivities is the stuff for ordinary matterings, like accidentally breaking the porcelain commonplaces, and to conclude, better to have a decent cup of tea first than to pause for some flickering. And before you know it, the launching pad for their not-so-secret colouring adventures is getting sticky from nonchalant use in too much or just not quite enough sun. Thank you.